Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're going to do arguments optional as part of the intermediate algorithm scripting course. Create a function that sums two arguments together. If only one argument is provided, then return a function that expects one argument and returns the sum. For example, add together 2 and 3 should return 5. Add together 2 should return a function. Okay, got it. So, yeah. It's kind of an if statement, right? We want to calling this returned function with a single argument will then return the sum. So if we go sum of 2 and we say add together 2, so this, because there's a single argument here, this is going to turn in this. We're going to make it so that the variable of sum 2 and is equal to a function that has the number 2 stored in it, which is going to be ready to be added to the number 3. So sum 2 and 3, yes, sum 2 and, so they set it here, and then when they call it again, you get 5. This is a bit tricky, so yeah, I hope I can do this. If either argument isn't a valid number, return undefined. If either argument isn't a valid number, return undefined. Okay, got it. So, yeah, here's the first one. I mean, the first thing that we could do is just say, we can let first argument is equal to arguments at position 0. Just before I get going on with that, I'm just going to console.log. I'm going to say arguments just to show you where I'm getting this from. Arguments is just a word in JavaScript that we use. So right now I'm just console logging it out. It's basically just an object with each of these in here, right? So the first one, arguments at position 0, renders out to 2, and arguments at position 1 is 3. If this was 3 and 6, position 0 is going to be 3, and then position 1 is going to be 6. This is just basically, arguments is just an array of the numbers that are passed into here. And so the arguments, yeah, we can call them like that. We don't actually have to give them a title up here. So yeah, I'm just making the first argument equal to the first one. So this right now would be 3 in this example. And we want to say let the second argument be equal to variable as well. And so returning false, add together. So yeah, right now we're just console logging here, but we could also console log, if we wanted to see it, we could say first argument and then the second argument here. And now you can see we're getting 3, 6 in here. So we're setting these to be the same. So, well, the first thing that we want to do is just make it so that we add together. I think what we're going to do is we're going to say, we want to create a conditional statement, right? If this is a number and this is a number, then do add them together, right? So let's say this actually, the second argument is only going to come into effect later. So what we should say is if arguments dot length is greater than 1, then we want to add, well, then we're going to put the second argument in there, because this is, if the argument's the length, because we have 2, if the length's greater than that, then we want to create a variable for the second argument. We could just return undefined if there was no argument, but it doesn't actually say that we need to do that in there, so we don't need to think about that. We're going to operate from the idea that this function is always going to have at least one argument passed in. Okay, so we've got our first argument saved here, our second argument saved here. I mean, we could be like return the first argument plus the second argument, right? And then this is going to get, if we add these together, we need to console.log the add together in order to see it in our console. This gets us 9, so this is actually going to pass some of the tests, only the ones where it's like this. Let's deal with this situation later. If we get one argument, we want to save it and return a function. Let's deal with this undefined situation now. So like if the first argument is equal to undefined, or if the first argument is not a number, we want to return undefined, right? So how do we find if something is not a number? We could do something like create a separate function and be like argument check, right? And then in here we just pass in an argument, and then we say if the argument is we want to get the type of, right? Type of argument is equal to a number, then we want to return the argument. And then else, if that doesn't happen, then we just want to return undefined. Yeah. Okay, so argument check. We could do this argument check. Let's go. I'm just going to console.log here, and we're going to do argument check, and we can put in things like here. 1. We're going to get back 1. I can comment this out just so it's cleaner. But right now it's 2, it's 3, and what we're doing is we're passing in 3. The argument becomes 3. If type of 3 is equal to a number, then we return it. And if it's not, we're going to return undefined. So if we put in an array, we get undefined. If we put in an object, we'd get undefined. If we put in some sort of a string, we'd get undefined. So this argument check thing tells us if the number is a number. So yeah, I'm going to get back to here, comment, remove that console log. I was just explaining what this function does. It just checks and then returns undefined unless it's a number. So yeah, this works for here, but it doesn't work for here. We need the function to return undefined if we get a number and then a string. So we want to say, so if the arguments dot length is greater than 1, so if we get 2 passed in, first off we want to check to see if first argument and second argument are both to make sure they're both numbers, right? So let's say if first argument, and we do argument check, first argument is equal to is not equal to undefined, and argument check second argument is not equal to undefined, then we can return this. I'm just going to extend this so it's easier to see. I think I made a mistake here. Okay, and I'm actually going to just put this onto another line, and this one. I don't like the way this looks. I want to refactor this later, but for now I'm just going to try to get it to work. And then we paste this into here. So if neither of the first argument and the second argument return undefined, then we just say, and we already know that they're only either going to be a number or they're going to be undefined. And then we can return first argument plus second argument. If we run the tests, we'll see that that doesn't pass for 2 and 3. Okay, so let's get this down here. So we're console logging out 3 and 6. So our error is that the second argument is not defined. Second argument is not defined. First argument. Second argument. Oh, look, arguments. Second argument. It is defined. It's right there. Oh, okay. First argument plus second argument. We're add together 3 and 6. We should be getting undefined right now. First argument. Second argument. Argument check. Argument check. Why were we getting false? That's weird. Add together 3 and 6. Add together first argument. Second argument. I'm going to console.log here to see what's going on. So I'm just console logging the second argument here. So that's 6, that's proper. If argument check first argument is not equal to undefined, second argument is not equal to undefined, oh, we're returning false, so, oh, our argument's length, we're returning false, which means it's going through this thing. But, I mean, is it even going into here? Pow. Okay, so we're not actually getting passed into here because it's not equal to undefined. Oh, I see what's happening. It's actually working. So what it's doing is it's coming in here and it's saying that we're not going through this if statement. And so what we're doing is getting to this point, and then we're just going down the whole thing. So if one of them is undefined, well, if one is equal to undefined, like it is here, because this is a string, it comes into here. The type of argument is not a number, it's a string, so we return undefined here. And then the second argument, we go, is not equal to undefined. Well, it is equal to undefined, so we don't execute the code that's within this block of code. And so now what we want to do is say else return undefined. I'm going to clean up the spacing here a bit. Cool. And so now we get undefined if we pass in a number and a string. We run the tests, and that should pass as well. Okay, should return undefined if we pass in a string. Okay, cool. So now what we want to do is deal with if the arguments dot length is equal to 1. So here we've got it if it's greater than 1. So let's go else statement here, and we say, I'm just going to do else if to be specific. But then what we do, else if we want the arguments dot length is equal to 1. So this means right now what we're saying, in here we're going to deal with a single argument. Cool. So I'm going to come down here and get rid of this guy. And the arguments.length is equal to 1. And we should, okay, and now we're getting into our console log. And we're returning false. I think we should just return undefined here. Let's just get rid of this return statement altogether for now. So yeah, now we're going to deal with a single argument. So if we get passed in a single argument, well, first off, we want to make sure that that single argument is not a string, right? So we already have defined our first argument. So what we can do is we can say, if our first argument, and then we do argument check. If the argument check of our first argument is equal to undefined, then we want to return undefined. Yeah, and so I think if we run the test now, this one should pass as well. Cool. So now we're taking care of the fact that somebody could pass a string in initially. And so now what we want to do is say, this handles it if it's undefined. But if it's not, so if it's a number, here we know now that the first argument is a number. So we can say, so if our first argument is a number and we are only getting one passed in, then we want to return a function, right? And then we're going to say that this function has the second argument in it. That this function will actually be waiting for a second argument. And then, yeah, so we do want to check to see again if the second argument and the first argument are undefined. Second argument, we can just actually check to see if it's undefined. If one of them is undefined, then we'll return undefined, but otherwise we'll return this one. So we can actually use this code again. And And we are going to refactor this because this is obviously duplicate code. So yeah, add together 3, and then we would go like 3, and this should give us 6. All right, cool. Now that's how you do it. Now let's refactor this. This breaks a few rules. You know, the do not repeat yourself rule. I mean, you saw me, I just copied and pasted this if statement, right? So this is exactly the same as this. So what we can do is remove this. And what does this do? It's like you check the first argument and the second argument, and you add them together if they're valid, right? So I'm going to cut this out of here and say, you know, return, or like check arguments and add if valid. And then I'm going to pass in the first argument and the second argument. Okay, cool. So now I need to write this function, right? So we're going to go function, check arguments, and add if valid. And I'm just in here, the first argument, I can just call them first and second. And then I can paste in the if statement from above. Right? So, and then here we can just go, instead of saying first argument, we can just say first, and then we can say second, and we can go, this would be second, and this is first. 2 and 3, second, first. Add together 3 and 3, so this should get it. Check arguments. So I broke it somehow. Add together first argument, second argument. Check arguments and add if valid. We're going to return. Oh, and here I need to put the return statement because we want to return this. So that gets us 6. So now, instead of having this big duplicate code with the if statement, I can remove this and then just put this here. And then if I run the test, that'll pass as well. Cool. So what I've done there is I've extracted some code into a separate function that can handle this part of it. And then that way I can use it over and over again in other ones. Yeah, let's see. Is there anywhere else? I'm noticing that I'm defining second argument twice. There's probably a way to combine these. But you know what? I don't know that that's really necessary. But basically the main thing that's valuable with this is that you return a function if there is a statement. So if you think about it, like, how would I describe this? You're returning this function. If there's a single argument and that single argument is a number, we actually we can assign it to a variable. Like here it is. Here's the example, right? Sum 2 and is equal to add together 2. So this add together 2 actually turns out to be this function in which you've got your first argument already saved in the function, and then you're going to whatever comes next, because when you do sum 2, so sum 2 and is a function with the number 2 stored in it, prepared to add it. And so if we go sum 2 and then we do 3, it returns 5. For our example, it's 3 and 6, right? Because so we could go, we could say let sum 3 and that's going to be add together 6. So if we were to console.log sum 3 and here, you see it's showing us that we're getting a function. And so so now we can say console.log sum 3 and then we could pass in something else. 3 plus 7 is going to be equal to 10, right? So here, the sum 3 and, it becomes a new function. And this actually mutates. I guess it sort of changes. Well, we make a variable equal to that function, and then we have it as a function. So that shows up like this. Another thing, like you can, if you were to console.log our other function. This is the other function that we have, right? You can see that it has a function and it's given a name, but this one is a function that doesn't have a name. It's not explicitly declared. So yeah, that's how it works. This one's really tricky. It took me a while to figure it out, to be able to make the video. I actually did it once before so that I could kind of come up with a strategy on how to do it. But yeah, this kind of tricky JavaScript stuff comes up quite often as programmers. So learning how to do stuff like this is pretty valuable in my opinion. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in the next lesson.